Hello, my name is Servaes and welcome to Encounters. My guest today is Conor White-Sullivan. Conor is still a senior in anthropology at the University of Massachusetts, but the reason why he's here is because he's also very active in the local political movement, and he started a web-based kind of organization which is called Localocracy. I have a bit of difficulty with that name because one of my fields of activity is Thailand, and those of you who are familiar with Thai politics, they are quite complicated, but they call their democratic process democracy, and that of course indicates that they are not so feeling great about what they're experiencing over there. But Conor will be able to explain what he has in mind during this interview. But as we would like to introduce a topic for you as general public or viewers with an interest in local politics, I would like to ask Conor to start with a bit of an assessment of what the local scene is about.
Yeah, so Localocracy is a participation platform for citizens to engage with the problems that are going on in their community. The idea we have is that local issues are the ones that affect people the most. They're the roads we drive on, it's the schools our kids go to, and to some extent local problems are often manifest of much larger social problems too. But it's a level where people can actually have influence and actually engage, accept the difficulty they have in finding about and having a voice on their local issues.
So what are the local issues here in Amherst and the surrounding areas?
So in Amherst specifically, there are always going to be issues regarding, whether it's issues that are being passed at town meeting, or whether it's things like the upcoming debate over the budget override and the budget deficit that's going on in the public schools. But the difficulty is that most citizens don't have time to go to a 6-hour town meeting so they can raise their hand for 30 seconds. And a lot of citizens don't have time to go around and search a scattered blogosphere or look through tons of articles in local newspapers to try to get a sense and then try to get their voice in. So what we're trying to do is create a platform where you can see, here are the issues in the community, here are the people running for office, here's how many people who live in this community support or oppose any given issue or candidate, and here's what they've ranked as the best points or the best arguments for that candidate. So you can see, get a good sense of public opinion, and also because we confirm that these are registered voters who actually live in the community, the hope is that as these sort of platforms grow, they can be sources of innovation or sources of engagement that could potentially influence public policy.
Okay, but now you're already explaining what the alternative is from the current situation. On the other hand, if we make an assessment of what is happening in Amherst and what we can observe in everyday life, the town hall meetings are well attended, the school committee meetings are quite well attended, as well as broadcasted live and in tape formats on ACTV and local stations. So people in that sense have or can use the opportunity to be informed about these things. At the same time, as we all know, Amherst citizens are quite creative and want to participate in the democratic movement at the local levels. So what is missing here, and what can your organization add to this with its web-based activities?
So I think what's missing is a really, like you said, there are a lot of citizens who can be really engaged and who have really good things to say. But unfortunately, one of the big qualifiers to even having the ability to start engaging is having a significant amount of time to attend these sort of meetings, to go and make their voice heard. And so, unfortunately, you get an overrepresentation of a small group of people who are dedicated to an issue. And it's good that they're dedicated, and it's good that they care about the issues. But the problem is when that is at the expense of the broader community, or when that is at the expense of people, a working parent, who's
so are you saying
jobs.
that those people who are active in local politics are not representing the mainstream or the majority of the population?
They could or they could not. If we don't have the majority of the population having a way to access it, and there of course are always problems with the digital divide, but it's significantly easier to access the internet and to access a computer than to go to a 6-hour meeting. So if you can't get voices from a large group of citizens, you can never know whether the voices that are showing up to town meeting are representative. Mm-hmm. They might be very representative, but the question is, how can we get that good mix of, people's stories and the words people say, and also back that up with saying how many people who live in the community agree with this idea or not.
Okay, but by introducing a web-based platform,
Mm-hmm.
You're also probably excluding some people in becoming active in this because they don't have access to internet. They may not be computer literate and being able to make use of the facilities properly. So there will be a bit of a divide there as well then.
So the digital divide has been is one of the major challenges that's facing not only our community but also the country and the world. In the next 10 and 20 mm-hmm. and 100 years. Well, hopefully it'll be done much sooner than that. Because having access to the internet, having access to social media is becoming more and more requisite for, connecting with other people in the community. It's been shown that it increases, your ability to get an income regardless of your income level. It improves educational access. Digital citizenship and giving people access and the tools to use digital media is going to be one of the major things that we do as a country in the near future. That said, we shouldn't be, what we're doing right now is we're setting a precedent for how people will use the internet to mm-hmm. engage with politics, and whether or not the internet will be a sort of equalizing medium for citizens to have their voice out there. So I don't think it's right to say that we should wait to start engaging citizens until everyone's on the internet, because if it doesn't provide that sort of change, if there aren't those sort of opportunities, then why would people bother accessing the internet anyways?
Right, but what about the traditional media? We have newspapers, radio, TV stations around. Aren't they fulfilling their obligations to properly inform the people? So
traditional media, the biggest challenge with traditional media is that it's always only been a few people, a very small group of people who have had the ability to produce content, information, knowledge, and culture that could reach a large audience in our society. And when that's where our shared messages are coming from, that's when mm-hmm. our shared values and our ideas about who we are and how the world works, when they're only coming from a small group of people, just by that structure, we start to feel as though, we're just passive observers. We're just consumers. The important things are the things that are happening on TV. The important things are the things that are happening in the newspapers. And if I'm not a part of that, well, I don't have the ability to change that sort of thing. So what's really interesting about it, that's where you get ideas like, Ronald Reagan saying that politics is like show business, right? It means that, a lot of things, everything's happening fast with, flashing lights and nice music, but it's hard to get, dive into the substantive content, and it's also, difficult for regular citizens to make their voice heard in the mass media. That's being totally overturned with the internet right now, because any individual who has access to, a $200 computer, right, can produce content, can write blogs, can make posts, can use Twitter, all these things. But what we've still lost is that what the local newspaper, and what the local, radio and the local television station gave us when everyone was going there was there's one, we have a shared reference point. We have a shared, place where we're all looking at the same problems in our community. Right. And that seems to be sort of what's missing. So, there's incredible opportunities with the internet where we're getting information from all over the place, and we're now taking it in and we're remixing it and we're making it our own, and then we're putting it back out in there, and we're becoming users of content. and not just consumers.
Yeah, but the traditional media will argue that they have done more or less the same. They have an overview of what's available and then try to summarize it in a consumable format for everybody to consume and to incorporate in one's own opinion making, etc. While the critique on the internet tends to be that there is too much variety, too much noise there, and you need some direction how to steer yourself through that kind of noise in order to find what you really need and what is really important to you.
Exactly. I think you're onto something with that. There's a quote that I really like from one of the original newspaper moguls, who said a good newspaper is a public talking to itself, right? And that was what the newspaper considered its job to be. It was the fourth estate. It was the method for transmitting public opinion into public policy. They went out and they gathered the stories and they assembled the content and they created this way of influencing the government. But at the same time, it was only a small group of media owners who did have the final say on what the content was on the newspaper. And there have been plenty of examples where, whether it's not wanting to offend their advertisers, content being biased, things like that. But mostly the difficulty is that we had moved to a culture that was sort of read-only with mass media, right? Where we heard the radio and we saw the television, we read the newspaper, but we weren't writing and producing and considering ourselves to be, citizens that were responsible and had the ability to change the world and to change our community.
So you want to turn passive consumers into active producers.
Exactly.
Okay, but then where do you start? You start at the local level.
Exactly. Okay,
explain that to me, because at the local level, a lot of things can happen and could be created, but how does it affect higher up policies and national or international kind of decision making?
I think what's important is that the local level is always going to be affected and always going to affect national issues, right? Like Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. How citizens view their local community is going to affect how their elected officials treat their local community. Giving citizens the ability to set their priorities at the local level starts to empower them and starts to help them think of themselves as, citizens with the ability to influence politics and with, with the expectation that their leaders will, listen to them. There's also this nice saying I like that states are the laboratories of democracy, right? If you look at what's been going on in the open government movement with a lot of states opening up their data and allowing people who are writing web applications to use that, the local level is where that actually impacts people's lives, right? So when the MBTA, in the East Coast of Massachusetts, opened up the data, then Google could start using it and say, oh wow, now I know on my phone, whether my train is running on time. People don't realize that that's something that the government had a hand in. The government opened up the data, which made those sort of applications possible. So I think that the local level is going to have a lot of implications on, how can we innovate? How can we identify and solve our common social problems at the local level? How can citizens be more engaged in seeing government as a platform instead of government as a vending machine? Because government isn't, I like to think of government sort of the way, Benjamin Franklin treated it. Benjamin Franklin, he started, the first lending libraries. He started the first volunteer fire departments. He started these grant matching programs, in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. And for him, government was a way of mobilizing people to get together to say, what do we care about and how can we work to make things better? And government is when government's that platform, we don't think of government as some, big gray brick building where we go to the DMV.
Right.
When it's something else and it's something that helps us connect with one another, that's where I'd like to see, government moving towards, to a more open and a more engaging platform for citizens to do the things they want to do.
Okay, and you think that your initiative will assist in that regard to create what you could call a grassroots political movement?
Yeah, in a sense that's what we're working on. Because like you said before too, the difficulty is how do you answer these these questions that are central to democratic decision making, right? How many people support or oppose any given initiative, or any given candidate, and why? And the why is important, because if you're in a neighborhood and they're about to put a landfill there, the why is a story that is, you don't want to just be a statistic.
Right.
Your story matters to other people, and your ideas on why this is a good thing or why this is a bad thing, those are going to be important, and as important as the number of people who get behind it. So having a way to deal with that, having a way to get that qualitative and quantitative data, so that we can easily see and easily understand where the community sits, I think is a good starting place for having a more open and engaged democracy.
Okay, so you want to provide a more a neutral space where all these data can be shared and discussed. But what is going to happen with the outcome of such kind of a deliberation?
I mean, basically the goal we have for an outcome is more active and more informed citizenship. That when
more participation.
More participation.
Okay.
Right. More participation. More people who are, who are looking into these problems. Imagine, right, a single mother who's on state aid because of bad situations, being able to say, hey,